This is a spoiler-free review of Mortal Kombat 2021, directed by Simon McQuoid. I'm Matt, and this is the other Matt.
Hey, what's up, guys? Talking about Mortal Kombat today. It's a good time. Matt, I'm going to start with we're not going to get into any spoilers. We're going to keep it really vague for you guys. So I'm just going to say overall, as a Mortal Kombat fan, I thought this movie did a good job establishing the lore that we've been wanting to see from this franchise and from these movies for a while.
Yeah.
It did it at the cost of having kind of a consistent tone. Not to say that the feelings weren't there, the emotion wasn't there. It was just kind of uneven in certain parts with its tone. But overall, this movie has some very good performances, some surprising performances, a lot of humor that landed that I didn't think was going to land. The fatalities are there. If you're a fan of the gore, it's R-rated. The fights are bloody. The fight choreography is good. If anything, this movie only slightly suffers as an origin to what is to come. You can tell that this movie is definitely building up for Mortal Kombat movies in the future. What they have here is a good base and a good foundation, albeit flawed in some places. I think it's a great popcorn movie. I think it's a treat for Mortal Kombat fans who like to dig into the lore. There's going to be a lot of Easter eggs for you to find and stuff here. And for just a general moviegoer who wants to see some bloody, fun combat fighting and, in a cool sci-fi world, this is going to be a good one. I don't think it's the best movie video game adaptation we've ever seen, but for sure it's a good one. Matt, what did you think overall?
I'm going to ask you after I'm done talking what you do think is the best video game adaptation. Overall, This movie does everything I'd want a Mortal Kombat movie to do. The martial arts scenes are pretty kick-ass, very frequent. There are enough callbacks to the game. Characters are pretty interesting. It's an incredibly challenging proposition to introduce this many characters who are so different from each other and include the lore of an other world in a tournament, and also try to be modern at the same time and be gory and be serious and be campy. And I would say that this movie really succeeded. I had a lot of fun. I would watch it again. And to me, it was just a total success at being a video game movie, Mortal Kombat movie.
So you want to know what I think this movie stacked against the best video game adaptation of all time?
Yeah, what's the competition?
I'm going to say Tomb Raider 2018. If anything, though, I think that Mortal Kombat 2021 we're entering the golden age of video game adaptations in both movie and film. We're not in there yet, but we're entering it. We had kind of these, if the Mortal Kombats from 1995 and some of these other video game adaptations like Hitman and stuff were those weird superhero movies we saw in the 90s and the early 2000s, like Daredevil and Elektra, that led into this Marvel, this very confident thing. I think we're right about there. We have The Witcher TV series on Netflix, which is excellent.
Castlevania was good.
Castlevania is excellent. We have the Last of Us coming up on HBO, which has a lot of talent behind it. Could be good. At the very least, this Mortal Kombat movie is showing that writers, creatives, and audiences are ready for movies that don't just take the base idea. Oh, it's people fighting bloody. And they want more than that. They want these characters to have backstories. They want there to be these different influences of bigger storytelling. And now that video games can provide that in more cinematic stories, I think that movies are finally kind of catching up. So while I don't think Mortal Kombat 2021 is going to be the one that people look back and say that was the first great, video game adaptation, I think there's been plenty of those before. I think it's definitely a turning point that shows, hey, a Mortal Kombat 2 or a Mortal Kombat 3 with a little bit more budget, a bit more refined of a script, and some maybe, a narrow creative vision, not trying to do too much stuff, could be honestly a fantastic blockbuster combat movie, just right up there with like a John Wick or something. People could be talking about a Mortal Kombat 2 for years to come. This first one was so close to getting it, and I think ultimately it's going to come down to your preference as a fan and what you're looking for in a Mortal Kombat movie. But for the most part, I thought it hit it. Matt, what's your favorite video game movie? You got one on head?
I don't. I think most video game movies are pretty awful, and the reason is that they either ignore the video game and they do something totally different, which feels weird, or they try to explain something that is generally not a great story. And I think that a big challenge with Mortal Kombat, like I said, is you're trying to bring all these different elements together, and I think that they did just enough. Now, where I think that this movie kind of struggled is that they wanted to rush things, which I totally agree with them doing, because you have to cram in so much and you want to keep this breezy. You don't want to make a fighting video game movie be weighed down. But it does feel a little bit rushed 2/3 of the way through. And then also all the different tones. Is that a Marvel movie? Is it a feudal Japan samurai movie? Is it a weird Korean space soap opera fantasy movie? You know, what's going on with it? But I think that it being Mortal Kombat, it gets away with it. For fans of Mortal Kombat, I think this is a total success. Yep. But I mean, how do you think people are going to take this if you like? I wouldn't necessarily show this to one of my friends that has no interest in video games, unless I thought that they were just into kind of campy, gory action movies.
Yeah. I think the only kind of Mortal Kombat fans this is going to let down are those who need to be hyper purist. It needs to be exactly the way it was in the video game lore, which is contradictory within itself, by the way. Yeah. Those are the only people it's going to let down. If you take Mortal Kombat far too serious, you are going to be doing yourself a disservice, because Mortal Kombat has nut punches. There's moves where people are getting punched in the nuts. There's cheesy fatalities. There is this air of campiness, and this movie does an all right job bringing that forth. So if you want it to be super, super serious, you're going to be a little bit let down. But I think this is pushing Mortal Kombat into a way where it can naturally breathe into a lot of different things. It can have super serious spin-offs. It can have some more jokey bits by not weighing it down and being super, super serious. Like you said, Matt, you're going to have concessions. Some characters are going to feel underbaked. Some fights might feel a little bit too cut. I thought there was a little bit too much cutting and too much editing in the fights. Some CGI might not be the best. But at the end of the day, everything is, if not serviceable, it is exceeded my expectations. And the parts that I didn't like about this movie are completely forgivable when you grant the stuff that I finally got to see as a Mortal Kombat fan and the promise of what is to come. So I think this is a great first attempt from the creative team. With a bit more refinement on their vision, we could see some really, 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 really good stuff in the future. Hopefully we get more Mortal Kombat. That's all. That's what this movie left me wanting, and what a good movie should leave you wanting is more. Not something radically different, but I want more of this, and I want to see what they can do with it.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see what they do in the sequel, because I know that they signed the Sub-Zero actor on to do
4 sequels, something like that.
Jesus Christ, he's going to have a crossover with Avatar.
Yep.
So I'd be interested to see like what they take from this one, if they kind of delve a bit more hardcore, because you're going to lose some of your mainstream audience after the first movie. So you can get a bit more hardcore. Are they going to brush up? Because parts of this feel kind of warm, modern, slick, Power Ranger-y Marvel, and other parts are like super campy. It, I believe. Yeah. Some are like not horror, but like almost up there. And then the parts where it really works, I hope that they kind of double down on that and maybe toss off some of the other stuff. But yeah, overall, I think it's a pretty great success. If you have any inclination towards Mortal Kombat or video game movies, I think it's a no-brainer to go watch this.
If you grew up playing the arcade ones, if you know who Sub-Zero and Scorpion are, I feel like that is enough of a crux to kind of, yes, you'll have a good time. It's very
inviting. Like for me, I stopped playing after Mortal Kombat 3, and you've been playing all the later ones, and I got... Like I recognize enough people, and I got a lot of the Easter eggs and jokes. So if you just like martial arts movies, it's pretty good. If you like
there's some fantastic athletic performances in this. Some really great fight choreography, some really great physical performances. Yeah, and some great acting performances. It's good.
I guess so.
Well, okay, you're gonna have your concession. Some performances are fantastic. Some a little bit let down. It's the Power Rangers effect. What are you gonna do?
Absolutely. And the nice thing about this though is that even
it's a team up,
even where the different kind of tones are clashing, the movie doesn't really stick with anything for too long. It's just kind of on to the next, and right when you think it's going to drag, it sort of kicks into high gear and takes it in a different direction than probably most Mortal Kombat fans are going to think. Won't spoil anything. And it kind of took me off guard at first, but I settled into it. Overall, enjoyed it. It's got that sort of modern blockbuster thing where the end is kind of pretty fastly done. And when I was rewatching some of it just to take a look at it, I go, I don't remember a few of these moments at the end, but I'd say the pacing, it's not a bother to watch. I mean, it's an hour, just under an hour and 50, and it moves along pretty well. I would definitely watch it again.
So you give it your recommendation, your Matt's recommendation.
I recommend it to video game Mortal Kombat fans, fighting fans, those fans.
I think this is a two Matt recommendation movie. Both Matts give our thumbs up. We both recommend this. We obviously had a lot to talk about, so if you want to hear us talk more in depth about the specific fights, about the performances we liked, some of the stuff we were hinting towards, we have a much longer spoiler discussion. So if you like this, I do recommend you go and check that out. Or if you've seen the movie and you want to see kind of the specific parts we liked and didn't like, go check that out for sure. But this is a two Matt recommendation movie, I think.
Yes, and we also reviewed Mortal Kombat 1995. If you haven't watched that,
Yep.
These reviews are available on our YouTube channel and on our podcast, Official 90s Kid. Actually, it's called a 90s Kid podcast. So thanks for watching.
out.
See you next time.
We'll see you soon.